for episode 23 is part one of a two-part story, The Jim Jam. So the story begins inside of a hotel. Now, the reason why the guests are being invited in the first place is because Jim has some big news that there's a Jim Jam event coming up and all the celebrities are going to be there. And of course, Lindsay, being a reporter that she is going to be announcing this event along with Video, who's going to be recording it. Rio's handling all the equipment as usual. And let's not forget Dance, aka Giselle, who is also there. The Starlight Girls, as you may have guessed, is serving the guests all the drinks and hors d'oeuvres just like every person would. Ba-Nee is in charge of collecting invitations, but little didn't everyone else know is that the Misfits who were in the hotel room wanted to know what happened. So Roxy of the Misfits, after she's done peeking out to see what happened, even Possessed wanted to know, what's Jim up to? What's going on? Don't worry, Eric told Possess. I'm sure that Clash will figure something out. As you may have guessed it right about now, Clash, aka Constance, as always, is going undercover, this time as a reporter. Tegrat, as you may have guessed it, as Eric's second right hand guy as he is, does what he knows best. He gives Constance, aka Clash, a camera to say, listen, all you have to do is find out what's going on at that party, and all you have to do is use that camera. So what the camera sees, the Misfits, including Eric, let's not forget about him, as manipulative as he can be, is going to know about it. So before Clutch can get on with her undercover work, she wants to know, how am I going to get inside? Even Possess, who agrees with Clash, to say to Eric, now you know that this part is for invitation only. So Eric, as always, is trying to make an insurance on Possess that Clash will figure out a way because she, being the mistress of disguise as she is, has a plan. So you know what this means. Clash, as always, is on her mission. One of the first things that Clash did as a reporter was to approach Ba-Nee of the Starlight Girls to tell her, hey, I just got some good news. Your missing father's downstairs waiting for you in the lobby. Really? Bonnie says. Does he have red hair? Of course he does, she says. But what Bonnie doesn't realize, as soon as she heads off, she didn't realize it was all a trick. Plus, she was also unaware that the reporter was really Clash, aka Constance, in disguise, but she doesn't know it yet. As soon as Bonnie goes downstairs to the lobby to meet with her quote missing father, as we mentioned just many episodes ago, that's when she was approached by Ashley of the Starlight Girls, who told her, you're not supposed to be down here. What are you doing wandering off like that? So that's when Bonnie explains that a reporter told her that her quote missing father's there, looking for her. But Ashley soon dismisses Bonnie's claim that she ever had a father, so she tells her that she doesn't have one. But Bonnie said to Ashley that it's not exactly true because her mother, before she passed away of childbirth issues, as we mentioned back in episode 6, had told Bonnie this story long ago. And all she could remember of her father was red hair, and that was it. As Ashley and Bonnie head back upstairs, Bonnie rests assured to tell Ashley that someday she will be reunited with her missing father. But in the meantime, Chrissy of the Starlight Girls back inside, speaking of which, is serving drinks to all the guests, including Dominic. Now, Dominic is the son of Lena Lerner, who we're about to meet later, and you can tell that he's extremely rude to Chrissy to tell her to bring him more punch, so in response, she told him to get him himself. So meanwhile, Kimber meets up with Jerica on stage to let her know that all the celebrities have arrived. So Jerica knows what to do. She went into gym, while the rest of the bandmates join up with her. While that is going on, Video, aka Vivian, does what she knows best, recorded the entire thing along with the mysterious reporter who she was unaware was her cousin in disguise. So Jim makes the big news that there's a Jim Jam event coming up and all the celebrities are going to be there. And so, one by one, Jim has called up all the celebrities to be up on stage. Roland's up first, Ronnie Cox is up next, then Lena Lerner and her son Dominic, that Chrissy of the Starlight Girls had just met recently. Next was supposed to be Luna Dark, but there's a problem. She's not going to be attending, but she'll be arriving later. Meanwhile, in the hotel room, Eric and the Mistress, and let's not forget Tagrat, who saw what had happened on screen, Pizzazz wants to know, how is Jim inviting everybody? Well, never mind that, Roxy says. What are we going to do about it? Well, Eric says, as always, I have a plan B in mind, and he showed the mistress the laser suits that it's going to be handy a little bit later. Well, back with Jim, she invited one last celebrity to be on stage, Johnny Deacon, and here he is now with his guitar. Meanwhile, Ashley of the Starlight Girls could just imagine herself what it's like to be a rock star one day. And she says, I can see it all now. I'll have my fans ask for my autographs. And so we cue into a fantasy mode by Ashley and her band, the Starlights themselves, with their song, I Can See Me. Anyway, after the song came to an end, Jim, the holograms, and the rest of the guests knew that the Misfits had just crashed the party as they normally do, and they do what they know best create some chaos and some mischief, if you will. Jim, who's angry and annoyed, just told Pizzazz of the Misfits, now you know that this party's by invitation. True, Pizzazz says, but we just invited ourselves. And so you know what this means. That means, as usual, the holograms, along with Jim and all the celebrities, are about to take matters in their own hands. But the Misfits are not alone. Punks had come in the same time as the Misfits did. Oh, by the way, the Misfits are wearing those laser suits that I had mentioned earlier. I told you they come in handy later, and I wasn't kidding. Anyway, the good guys are now taking matters in their own hands. So that's when, after the fight started, that's when Class said, hey, you holograms are much too good for your parties anyway. So guess who decided to not to take the Misfits' side, none other than Video and Lindsay. Back with the holograms with a little help from a little bit of celebrity teamwork, and of course Rio, and let's not forget Lindsay and Video, and of course let's not forget the Starlight Girls who helped out on the way. After Jim told the punks, "Look what you did! You ruined my party." So after that, the rest were escorted out. The bad guys, that is. After the bad guys left, Jim apologized to Johnny for this mess that the Misfits had made, but Johnny tells her that there's no need for that. Then Lizzie has her turn to speak in her case to say, I know the Misfits are desperate, but not like this. So we know what this means. Until the event arrives, the celebrities have no choice but to stay at the Starlight Mansion for a while. As Dominic heads upstairs, Chrissy was told by Annie to apologize to him for her past behavior at the party the previous night. As Chrissy heads upstairs with Dominic, she tried to apologize, but he tells her not to bother and takes Chrissy's room. And of course, Dominic, as you can tell, wanted to make her room his, and he was very insistent about it. So Dominic told Chrissy, make sure you close the door before you leave, and so Chrissy did that. So after Chrissy leaves the room, she was upset and annoyed. Annie tries to cheer up to say, come on, let's make the best of it, shall we? Back with Johnny and Jerica, he saw out the upstairs window that his drummer had arrived. His name is Randy James, and so Johnny was asking Jerica if Jim should meet him, so she agreed. So as Johnny goes downstairs, Jerica knows what to do. She changed into Jim's so she can meet up with Randy. But in the meantime, 8-year-old Bonnie of the Starlight Girls is sitting on the staircase, wishing and hoping for her quote missing father to return. So she goes into the song of her own, A Father Should Be. After her song came to an end, someone called her name, and that someone was Ashley of the Starlight Girls. So by the time that Bonnie snapped out of her fantasy, she was told by Ashley to come downstairs to say hello to Randy, who had just arrived. Back downstairs, Jim had just met up with Randy, who's Johnny's drummer, while meanwhile, Ba-Nee, by the time that she saw Randy, she could tell that there was a resemblance that both Randy and her missing father had red hair. So when Bonnie went up to introduce herself to Randy, she gave him a hug. Back with the Misfits, they're on the rooftop of Misfits Music along with Tech Rat and Eric. So that's when Pizzazz suggested to get the audience's attention since Jim Jam's on his way, and what better way to do it with a bunch of balloons. Back at Starlight Mansion, everyone's playing volleyball in the backyard. Well, except for Bonnie, of course. When Rio shows up minutes later to tell Jim the bad news that there's a problem with Johnny's sound system, that's when, as a matter of fact, Rio said, Johnny should be here at any time. That's when minutes later the helicopter arrived and landed in the Starlight Mansion's backyard. So Jim agrees to go with Johnny in the helicopter while Rio stays behind in the backyard. So while Jim and Johnny were in the helicopter, they passed by Starlight Music and, of course, Misfits Music on the way. So back at the Misfits Music's rooftop, Eric agrees to let the Misfits let go of the balloons. Next thing you know, the helicopter was surrounded by balloons everywhere. And so the helicopter got out of control and almost crashed into the rooftop of Misfits Music. But luckily, the helicopter gains control while everybody got off the roof, the Misfits and Eric, that is. So good news, now that the helicopter regains control, it heads back to Starlight Mansion to land in the backyard. So back at Starlight Mansion's backyard, well, good news, the helicopter landed safe and intact, and with Rio safe and relieved to see that Jim's okay. Even Lena Lerner couldn't believe it. There were balloons that were the cause of it, so she made an assurance that the Misfits will get what they deserve. Later that night at Tech Rat's Rat Hole, which is the name of his hideout, by the way, as you may have guessed it, Tech Rat, who's Eric's second right-hand guy, does what he knows best. Eric's getting really worried and wondering where Clash went. Now, funny Eric should ask that, because when Clash shows up minutes later, she told the others that she had some good news. And look what Clash had. The schedule of Luna Dark's flight that was supposed to be arriving at the airport. Eric seems delighted to see that Clash has done well, and he seems impressed with it. After Eric looked at the flight schedule very carefully that was given to him from Clash, he said to the others that he knows exactly where Luna Dark's going to be arriving at. Before the Misfits can get on their way, Techrat told the Misfits that the remote control is guaranteed to change all the flight numbers and times, so even they themselves couldn't mess it up. Meanwhile, at Starlight Mansion, when Jericho arrives at the Rock and Roaster to pick up the girls, she too has the same good news as the Misfits did, is to arrive at the airport to pick up Luna Dark. So after Jericho picks up the girls and they left Starlight Mansion, Jericho and the girls knew that they had to hurry up to the airport to pick her up right away. Her being Luna Dark, that is. But little didn't she, Jericho, and her friends know that someone else was also there. And that someone were the Misfits, and they were also at the same airport as the holograms did. The Misfits, as you may have guessed it, disguised themselves as limo drivers. Pizzazz the Misfits knows what to do. With a little help from Techrat's remote control on the way, she changed all the flight numbers and times. What the holograms didn't know is that when the time that they too arrived at the airport as the Misfits did, they didn't realize that the Misfits had already taken Luna Dark in the limousine outside. What the holograms also didn't know is that also all the flight numbers had been changed on them. But by the time the holograms realized what had happened, they decided to chase after the Misfits and along with Luna Dark, whom the Misfits had been taken into the limousine to go back to the Gabor estate. So Jim suggested to her bandmates to meet her back at Starlight Mansion, while Jim, however, is following the limousine back to the Gabor estate by disguising herself as a cab driver driving a cab. By the time she arrives at the Gabor estate, she saw a limousine pulling up straight there, passing the guard. Back with Jim, who had just disguised herself as a cab driver, she arrived at the Gabor estate. While meanwhile inside, the mistress took Luna Dark inside. Back outside, Jim comes up with another disguise, Pizzazz of the Misfits, driving a Misfits van, so she too passed the guard inside the Gabor estate. So now that Jim's inside the Gabor estate, Plan A worked, and so the Misfits van changed back into the Rock and Roaster, while Pizzazz changed back into Jim. So now all Jim has to do is to rescue Luna Dark. But before she could do that, Jim was soon surrounded by a bunch of guard dogs. Things look bad for Jim, and so that ends episode 23 in part 1.